This game, Arcs, is too good. Everything has been thought out so well, and Arcs really is a space opera because each round or chapter that you play is different, and the story that unfolds depends on this constant push and pull for first place. It's so cool how you get to pull winning conditions in your favor, and the stakes only get higher while leaving no one behind. To me, that's the best thing about Arcs, because you can visualize a player's rhythm, you can see it, and then you can learn exactly about how to break it. Welcome back, everyone, to the Wolfpack. It is so good to see you all, and if you're new to the channel and you like what we're doing here so far, go ahead and hit subscribe down below so we can grow the Wolfpack even further this year. Feels good to be making videos like this again. So today, I'm gonna tell you all about Arcs, what I like about it, what I don't like about it. But first, let's go ahead and start off with how to play this game. So your goal in Arcs is to get a certain number of points based on the player count. And how you score points is by ranking first or second place in all of these goals along the right side of the board. So in general, it's basically whoever has the most of a listed resource in this chapter that we're playing or round. But what makes Arcs so good is that it takes every mechanic 2 steps further. And nothing is, in a sense, traditional. First player is whoever has this initiative marker, and then they can declare an ambition. So I can declare Warlord, and whoever has the most trophies by defeating other players' ships that turn is gonna score 5 points. But like I said, Arcs takes it 2 steps further, right? So it's not that simple. From there, other players can seize ambition from the first player marker, and guess what they can do? They can now declare an ambition too. So now they can either double down and give some more points to that initial goal, like let's say if we're going with the whole Warlord example, now they can score 8 points instead of 5, or they can split it. And some players can score 5 points for Warlord and 3 points for another one. Like the Empath, which means whoever has the most psionic icons from resources and guild cards are gonna score 3 points. And at the end of that chapter, the points marker with the lowest value is gonna flip over. So now that one has a higher value for this round, and the ambitions will change. So you're gonna be able to score more and more points with every single chapter. So what does all of that mean? It means if player 1 is scoring a bunch of points, they had a really good round, scored freaking everything in the first chapter, doesn't mean anything, because then the next chapter, whoever has all those points can score even more than player 1. And ultimately, it means that hope always feels like it's within reach. And I love that Arcs does that because it feels like everyone is included and everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. Now that right there is how you score points in Arcs. But now the next question is, well, what do you do on your turn? Okay, here's where things get hella interesting. Side note, I only sleeve cards that are absolutely staying in my collection. Arcs is staying. But anyways, beside the point. If you're the first player, you get to play the lead card. And on all these cards, on the top left of them, it's gonna show you a number of pips. Oh my God, that felt so good. Does that make me a real board gamer now using fancy terminology like that? Pips? For every pip shown on the card, you get 1 action. And then when it's everyone else's turn, they now have 3 choices. They can play a higher number matching the same suit. That's called Surpass because they can now take all the actions on their card. A second choice that other players have is to copy. This means that they get to play a card face down, but then they can only use 1 action and only what's set by the lead card. That's why playing the lead is so important. And the third choice is for them to pivot. So they can play any other card with another suit, but they can only take 1 action listed on the card that they played. See, so if you break it down, you only play 1 card on your turn. But playing that 1 card has such a big impact, and that's what makes Arcs so cinematic, because you are deciding, especially if you're the lead player, you get to decide how the story unfolds. And if you're everyone else following suit or not following suit, then you get to play a part, a really big part in that story as well. Here's an example of some of the choices that are kind of whirring around your head as you're playing this game. So like, I could play a higher number card, that way no one surpasses me, but in exchange, I get less actions. Or I could play a lower numbered card and potentially get more actions, because then if I sacrifice another card, then I'll be able to take initiative, and the next round, I'll be able to take a bunch of actions with lower number cards. But then, Cat just played a really big movement card, and I'm trying to get over to that planet. That way I can get a bunch of resources and tax that place before the round's over. So should I do that? Or should maybe I'll probably just play it safe since she played a big movement already. I'll just stay here and build out my empire. It's decisions like that that makes ARX so much fun because every choice that you make really matters. Bottom line, if you like games with a lot of depth, in ARX, there is no simple solution to every problem. So next up, let's go and talk about those actions. So movement is amazing in this game. The fact that the map looks so small yet feels so far is very thematic to the whole space theme. Similar to Root, you can move any number of loyal ships from one system to an adjacent system. And if you're loyal, that just means that they're your colored pieces. Now, if I want to move faster, then I can launch my ships from a starport, which are one of two buildings that you can have. And these can take a catapult move. That means you can move and drop off ships as much as you want until, and this is super important, until your ships move onto any planet or gate controlled by anyone else. That right there is one of my biggest worries about an area control game because the last thing you want to do is spend all your movement actions having to move your giant AF army across the map. That's not the fun part. The fun part is interacting with others, battling, and building out your empire. So when movement is restricted in a sense like that, then you're more likely and more inclined to just turtle far away from each other, and then it becomes like a solitary game. And I love how ARK solves that by having that center point where it feels like you're traveling light speed across the space. And then it encourages you to fight other players because they're stopping you from catapulting across the map all the time. So it restricts your movement. And I love that balance between the two. You're not just wasting actions to move. And why you want to move is so that way you can build in other planets. As long as you have one of your pieces in a system, you can build a starport there or a city. If you build a city, that's how you start to gain resources because you can tax that city. And then starports also let you build out more ships. The fun part is taxing other players' cities, which will give you a resource and capture one of their agents. Next up is influence and secure. If you influence, you take one of your agents to the court, which are a row of cards. And this is how you gain really strong powers that can make big changes to your game. But you're bidding for it, and it's no one's card until someone uses the action called secure. So then they can take all the agents on there, even if they're yours, and gain that card. This is how they capture other players' agents. You want to capture it because it is one of the ambitions that allow you to score points at the end of the chapter. And then of course, let's go ahead and talk about combat. Now combat actually reminds me a lot of Oathsworn in this game because you do get to choose your pool of dice. If you have 5 ships, you pick out 5 dice. And the red assault dice are glass cannons because they can do big damage, but they can hurt your ships back. Raid are the orange dice. They can also hurt you, but they can also steal loot from another player's city. Because if you look on the player board, see how the resources are locked in with keys? This is how many keys you have to roll with the orange dice to steal that particular resource from using the raid dice. And you can even take guild cards from other players as well. And the blue skirmish dice are completely safe, but the odds of damaging other ships are way lower since they are more defensive. So you pick out your dice according to the number of ships that you have, and then the attacker decides the fate of combat. Every ship that takes a hit will get damaged, and 2 damages causes the ship to become your trophy. So this is probably my one, not really an issue, but more so like a point of interest where it could have been better for the defender, because when you're fighting, only the attacker gets to decide the fate of everything that happens. So it's like a one-sided fight. And to me, I think if you're the defender, it doesn't feel as fun because you don't get to do anything. And I really missed like the combat in Root where when you have ambush cards, at least the defender has some time or has a way to retaliate. But there is no way for defenders to retaliate in ARX, and I do miss that a lot. But at the same time, they do get like an auto defense roll. So like if there's like this circle counter on one of these dice, then the person that's attacking, the attacker's ships, will get damaged. And that's the only type of interaction that you get in combat. So combat is super fun, but it's mostly fun for the attacker, and the defender kind of just sits there and kind of like waits it out to see what happens. So is two-way combat necessary in ARX? Not really, but I do miss it. I think it would have been really fun if there was an option for the main cards for you to defend against the attacker, or like have a way to soften the blow, or even re-roll dice and like spend a card, just like how you have to spend a card to seize the initiative. I think that would have been a really cool option. That way it's fun for both sides of the fight instead of just one. Now, the expansion for ARX adds in our beloved asymmetry. There are 2 types of cards that are added. Leaders will give you unique powers and a unique starting setup. Your lore cards are persistent powers, and I highly recommend getting this expansion if you like asymmetry, because once you get used to the core game, these powers really take this game up a notch, and I feel like it really brings out the full potential of ARX. One of the coolest things about the expansion is the leader cards. So I think it's super fun how there is a major strength and typically a major negative to your leaders. Because when you have an asymmetrical power, usually it benefits only you. But in ARX, they put you in an interesting situation where you have a very strong power, but you also have to balance out, and you have to realize that it comes at an expense. So for instance, I played as the Feastbringer. The Feastbringer allows me to influence before securing a card, and typically that's 2 separate actions, so being able to do that as one is a major advantage for timing when you get cards. But if you look at the second part of Feastbringers, it says generous. To declare an ambition, I have to give away one of my guild cards to the person with the lowest amount of points. I love that because you got to think about your advantage, and at the same time, you have to power scale it down. That way you're able to bring in this catch-up mechanic for other players that aren't doing so well and like deal with your own weaknesses. So having your strength and a weakness at the same time for powers, that's awesome. Overall, ARX is an easy 5 out of 5 for me. It's one of the best games of 2024 so far. Cole Wehrle and the whole Leader Games team knocked this out of the frickin' park. Surprised I am not, because they just have so much depth and strategy to their game. So with ARX, I'm just not surprised that they really took everything up so many notches, and it is an incredible experience. I played this game 5 times now across all player counts, 2, 3, and 4. 2 works out really well because the map shrinks and the ambitions will scale. So that way you can't just keep capitalizing on one ambition. And if you're looking for a game with meaningful play interaction, ARX will deliver that tenfold with every single turn that you take. I would say 4 is probably my favorite player count, even though it's really good at 2 and 3, because then you get that natural counterbalance for every player. Having a bigger group really gives you a lot of moments for really big laughs and just stress, thinking about all the chaos that's happening and everyone fighting for different ambitions. I can't stop thinking about how this game branches so well. Like, you play a card in a turn, that's all you're doing. You're playing literally one card. But the amount of choices and thought that goes into playing that one card is a big deal, because that is literally going to tell the entire story that you're about to play right now. So much depth and strategy, yet there's very minimal downtime because you're ultimately playing one card in your turn and just speeds up every round. At the beginning of this video, I said that ARX breaks your rhythm. And the reason why is because with the first few plays I had, I couldn't wrap my head around this game. Not that it's difficult to learn, like it's a medium to heavy-ish game. It's not difficult to learn, it's difficult to master. It's difficult to understand how this game really works, because I feel like I can really see the rhythm in a lot of other games I play nowadays since I've played so many, but it's so different and it puts you in a very unique situation, being able to think about all the counterbalances with all the players and the powers that you have and everything. And one of my biggest worries when I played the very first game of ARX was, well, what if I have a hand of just small cards, right? Because then if everyone has bigger cards, then they can just keep initiative. But then you can only seize initiative once per round of the game. And then on top of that, you only have to spend one card. So it is a big deal to lose that one card, but when you do, you get initiative for the next round. So even if I had, and this actually happened, when I had a hand of all low cards, literally all 1, 2s, and 3 was like my highest card, I actually spent a 3, which is the middle ground between 1 through 7 if you're playing a 4-player game. So I spent a 3, and then the next turn, I spent a 1, and then I get 4 actions that turn. So even if you have a hand of low cards, you get a ton of actions to play with after that. And then on the opposite side, if you have a hand of just high cards, well, then you get to surpass everyone and take your full amount of actions at the cost of using only 1 or 2 actions per turn. And of course, if you have a mix of those, then you get to play around and do whatever you want. That right there is already a sign of a great game, because if you're given a situation and you're allowed to adapt and deal with whatever you're given, whatever hand of cards you're dealt with, and still be able to win and be able to seize opportunities for yourself, then that right there makes the experience super fun. Last thing I want to mention, since I clearly love this game, is that I love how you're not punished by the actions that you take, because you do have a total of 5 chapters to play with, and every chapter will build upon the previous chapter. Not only in like the map and the several empires that you're playing with, but also like with the amount of points that you can score each turn. So it's literally anyone's game, throughout all 5 chapters. And that's happened out of the 5 games we played. 3 of those games were won by the person in last place. So that makes the game incredibly satisfying because I was last in one of them. Like I said, hope is always within reach. So with that said, I hope you all enjoyed my review and thoughts about Arcs. Let me know what you all think about this game down below. Is this a game that you're planning to pick up? Or on the other hand, is it probably a game that you're probably not gonna pick up? Let me know all your thoughts down below. And if you made it here to the very, very end, go ahead and comment Wolfpack down below because it's been a hot minute since we've made videos here. And I'm excited to be back making these videos yet again. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all in the next one.